Well, I mean, it's kind of a challenge, right? Because she said she would do a psychological evaluation, but she had some very simple questions, and nobody wants to answer these questions, which I gotta be honest with you, it doesn't make any sense to me. They're actually very reasonable. But on the other hand, they did do this thing where they spent many years stealing her life and having her exposed to all of these representations of who she used to be, but in the form of women with blonde hair. For whatever reason, they kept giving her blondes, really, really blonde, that were supposed to be Syrian, that became journalists and were working with people she used to work with. And then all her friends who used to be doing other things like, I don't know, engineering, ended up going into academia and studying humanities and wouldn't talk to her, right? And then she went and she got put in the hospital and she contested that. But then they revealed after she got put in the hospital, there was that Amnesty International report about how those judges in Syria were administering a prison camp where they just summarily executed people. Thousands. 13,000 people. And she had foreknowledge that somebody was using her life for Syrian political prisoners for several months beforehand, but nobody believed her. And nobody wanted to talk to her. Everybody was too busy to talk to her. And all they kept doing was giving her $10 or $20 here for a transportation card. And they did this to her for years. And so now she is kind of concerned because this whole Navalny thing is really triggering her. And the major thing that's triggering her is she literally understands, she believes, she has material evidence about how the hit on Navalny was called from Texas. And nobody will be honest about what's really going on. And she's creeped out because the other information she has lets her know the Kremlin knows. The Kremlin, she thinks, she believes, the Kremlin actually knows that the hit on Navalny was actually called in Texas. And presumably, Russia wants to do some sort of case about the Crimea, and all of the stuff that they did with her case totally correlates with stuff going on between Russia and the Ukraine, and specifically regarding some sort of gas and oil sector thing in the Crimea. And every fucking day, all she gets is some old man that wants to talk to her about food and how it smells good. I mean, I'm just saying, what do you expect her to do? They've been trying for years to program her into some sort of the murder fembot sex assassin instead of anything else she could do. And nobody wants to deal with the actual Syria stuff, and nobody wants to deal with all that entails, and that's all she's got. Well, I'm just saying, you weren't able apparently to prove that she was criminally insane because she's not locked up. And by the way, you won't provide any of the paperwork. If there's any justification for trying to maintain this ruse that somehow she's not actually onto something, why won't you at least give her the paperwork on the discharge order so she can challenge it? There's nothing unconstitutional about somebody that was presumably provided with medical treatment that they felt did not actually serve their needs, protesting or filing grievances and following through on grievances concerning not getting adequate. Here's the thing, she was genitally tortured for years. She was genitally tortured for years. She understands and believes she was genitally tortured for years. And nobody, not one person, has given her anything close to any therapy or any sort of consideration about what it means to understand you've been genitally tortured for years while you're not even allowed to have a second witness in the room. I'm just saying, what do you expect to be the result? What do you expect? I mean, I'm kind of like at a loss because everything, that whole standard of reasonableness, it's not getting met. It's not getting met. She believes it's part of some sort of deal that was set up in connection with that robotics conference that happened. There was some robotics competition that happened in 2017, and she's triggered too because she met one of the teams. While she was homeless, she met one of the teams in the park. She talked to them. They gave her a card, and then she ended up finding out that the robotics competition was one of three that was happening. And so now all of this stuff, right? And then she came to Dallas, and then that's where the whole the spy shit. I mean, when you guys wanted to start playing around like this had to do with spying or had to do with intelligence, well, she went to the library. She saw the Jane's manuals. Well, yeah, the ones in Dallas are all for, what is it? Repair. They're all repair manuals for some sort of hardware, but that's not what they had in Chicago. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just saying. Well, she can't get in the library, right? And I'm just saying, none of this makes any sense on any standard of reasonableness at all. You cannot say to somebody that's being routinely and repeatedly subjected to completely, not only unconstitutional, but unreasonable by any standard of the law or even by any standard of what you would accept as being mentally sound, to be compared with and evaluated based on standards so arbitrary and then denied anything else except a constant compulsive process whereby she's supposed to demonstrate that she's willing to lie. And I don't know, what do you want her to say? Do you want her to say that, well, I had to get some electric shock therapy, so I just don't remember, like her mom did? Yeah, well, I don't think she's going to do that. She's much more qualified, competent, capable, and necessary right now than to do that. Well, you're going to have to deal with that because I actually have to say, I don't really consider you at this point to be providing anything close to competence in this regard. And if you're not going to give me the person I need to or the people I need to, then we're going to have to acknowledge this at another level. You should have declared your intentions directly. And you haven't. And that means you're not eligible for the treatment of a prisoner of war. Right? By your own standards. I can't do anything about that. You're the one that had these standards. Well, that's how she sees it too, right?